There's breaking news out of Washington, D.C. Politico is reporting that a draft majority opinion has been leaked overturning Roe versus Wade. What does that leak mean? Is Roe overturned? And what should we do as pro lifers if Roe falls? We'll have answers to all these questions and more today on The Mark Harrington Show. Mark Harrington Show is brought to you by Created Equal, and you can donate to our ministry by going to markharringtonshow.com. Just click on the donate link, and you can subscribe to the podcast by going to any of the popular podcasting platforms. Please share the program and leave a 5-star review. My guest is going to be here is Katie Short with Life Legal Defense, and she's going to be helping to answer some of the questions because I'm sure there are going to be a lot of them because this is not normally how things work in Washington when it comes to the Supreme Court. This is not supposed to happen this way. So we want to kind of go through each one of these questions and ask them and get answers for you and try to give us a roadmap forward with the looks like the very probable overturning of Roe versus Wade. So, Katie, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
And I appreciate it late notice. I know that you are following this very closely. This is what you do at Life Legal Defense. And we appreciate the work that you do in defending us and keeping us out of trouble, trying to keep us out of court. And so when I was texting you last night, I was asking, what do you think? What do you think? So I thought, well, we'll just have you on the air today and we'll deal with it then. So this is unusual, right? Let's first deal with that. I've been reading here and there that this is like unprecedented, that the Supreme Court would either leak or this would be some kind of a hack or whatever. This information would come out before the decision was officially handed down. Do you know, in your history in doing this work, have you ever seen anything like this?
I have not, and it is very, very unusual. And I've read some books, by clerks who already sort of were pushing the limit of, revealing what was going on behind closed doors. But in terms of what was going on behind closed doors long after it had happened, but to have an opinion come out before, to get a peek into the deliberations and specifically a draft opinion before the final opinion is released is, as far as I know, unprecedented.
I know that some of the liberals, I've been watching some of their tweets and such, and they say, oh, this isn't unusual. And they cite all these cases, apparently, that there's been leaks like this. I don't think there's ever been a leak like this on a case that has the magnitude of the Dobbs v. Jackson. That's for certain. We don't know what happened. We assume that there was some kind of leak from within the court, probably from a liberal justice or a clerk, possibly. At this point, I don't know whether it matters or not. It is what it is. But how does that bode for the integrity of the court? I know John Roberts and, of course, all of us want the U.S. Supreme Court, the institution, to have credibility with the American people. And the fact that apparently that these conversations were, this been leaked, that this actual document, I mean, it is the opinion, the draft opinion. I'm reading it last night. That's crazy that someone let this out.
Well, I mean, you got to understand, Mark, that is clearly marked. This is a first draft. And
right.
Interestingly, last October, I actually heard Justice Alito speak. He was attending an event, and there was a little question to answer. And one of the questions was about to explain, please, the process that these opinions go through. And he did explain. He said, we talked about the vote that's taken after the oral argument. And then at that point, the opinion is assigned to a particular justice who is in the majority. The Chief Justice assigns it to one of the justices. And then as Justice Alito put it, he said, and then if it's assigned to you, you draft the opinion and then you circulate it. And what you hope for is that what comes back from the justices is, this is perfect, don't change a word. But he said that rarely happens. So we really have to understand that this is a draft opinion. Now, I mean, obviously you could, if this is the majority opinion, then there may be, tinkering around the edges, but
Right.
you wouldn't expect the actual result to change. But I also think it's important to recall that along with the opinion came that this leak of the opinion came a leak of a rumor. And the rumor is that there are four other justices who are in agreeing with Alito on this.
Yeah.
And so I think the
And that's
rumor
really the news.
that is really the news. That is
Yes.
as
If
significant
that's the
as
case, for sure.
yeah.
Well, yeah, so the inside baseball is in December, they after the court was heard the case, the oral arguments, which, by the way, I saw you out front of the Supreme Court that day. They get together, they have a conference, and they take an initial vote, is that right? And then they assign the decision based on that vote to one of the justices. At that time, apparently, John Roberts was not one of those, so it might have been assigned to Clarence Thomas because he's the senior uh, justice in the majority position, right? So did he hand it off to Alito? I know this is all speculation, but is that most likely what happened?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know how you could say that John Roberts was not in the majority and then would have assigned it to Alito. I mean, he wouldn't have necessarily taken the opinion writing to himself. He could be in the majority and have assigned it to Alito. You're right. You're correct that if he was not in the majority, then
Which we're
it would
assuming that he's not at this point, probably.
I mean, that's the rumor. But again, you have to understand, what does the majority mean here? What we have is a law, a
Mhm.
15-week abortion ban, and the question is it constitutional or is it unconstitutional? And so, that is the basic holding before the court. And so you could have six votes to say that the law is constitutional, to overturn the Fifth Circuit decision, but not six votes or even possibly five votes to overturn Roe. That's always been
Mhm.
our concern in this case. I don't think there's, would there be enough justices trying to find a middle ground, a something less than overturning Roe, in terms of upholding the law. I only the most cockeyed optimist on the other side would say that they thought that the court would actually there be five votes to actually strike down this law.
Gotcha. My guest is Katie Short with the Life Legal Defense. We're talking about the leak of the draft opinion, majority opinion, at least at this point, from Samuel Alito that was leaked to the Politico last night. And we're trying to make some sense of all of this. Katie, so let's go through a couple of these questions that I have. I asked my staff this morning to actually give me a few of these, and I want to get your take. So this is not a final decision. I can answer that. What do you think will happen now? I know this is speculation, but you have this draft out there. There's going to be dissents that are going to be written. Do you believe that they're going to wait until the end of the term, or could they rush this out because of the leak? What are your thoughts on that?
Um, when you say they could rush this out again, it's a matter of the dissenters. I mean, to the extent, well, first of all, finalizing the opinion, is there perhaps by this point that there is a final majority opinion, but
Uh-huh.
you would have dissenting opinions, and they could take their time about writing those. And again, the drafts get circulated, and then you could have concurrences. So the dissent raises a point, so somebody wants to write a concurrence which responds to that point. There's lots of things that could work to slow that down. Now, so when you say they could rush it out, the question is, who is they at this point?
Right. Well, I guess it's all of them. I guess that's probably you're answering my question. That more than likely they're going to take their time and use the full term to get it out. That's
They
probably
being
most likely.
some of nine individual justices, who each of whom
Yeah.
has their own
Mhm.
view and their own, um, what they want to see happen in this case. And
So let me ask you this: what if there is a strategy, and we don't know at this point as to why this was leaked, and it's almost impossible, obviously, to know. But can you conceive of any possible strategy that would work to reverse this supposed overturning of Roe versus Wade between now and the time they actually release the official opinion?
if there was some hope, if again, assuming that there was a tactical decision by someone, and I think we all assume that it was a tactical decision by someone on the pro abort side, and why it was leaked to a left leaning publication. And I think uh, perhaps that the thinking was that there would be such a, yeah, we had protests and pickets outside the Supreme Court as we have had for years, and we had in December, and they had, I think, later on, January 22nd or whatever. But would they thought, well, maybe now is the time, if it was confirmed there are 5 votes to overturn Roe, or we need to do something. We need to, or there's one justice who's going back and forth. Now is the time to drop the nuclear bomb and really get people excited about this. I think they probably have miscalculated about that, though. I
Mhm.
think the protests will not be different in kind than they have been for 40 years, 40 to 50 years. I think, yeah, you'll get people outside the court. And I don't think they will differ that much in kind or intensity from every time the court has done anything in the pro-life direction. It's always been, it's the end of Western civilization as we know it.
Right, I got that. So, when it comes to the leak, is there any protocol? I mean, the rules are not written, I assume, that this type of thing doesn't happen. Is there any repercussions for a justice or a clerk or someone in the court to release this kind of information, to leak it? I read today that John Roberts this morning has now commissioned the marshal of the U.S. Supreme Court to look into this. What happens in that case? What goes on?
Well, you're right. It is unprecedented. So I don't really know. I mean, I don't think
Okay.
I can't imagine a justice being involved in this. I really can't. I would think it's more, I think he more of a clerk. And
Now, do clerks have, are they licensed to practice as attorneys? Are they attorneys generally or not? In other
that is
words,
a
can
good
they be disbarred or something for this?
They could. I mean, if they violated a broke a contract, an agreement that they signed, that would certainly be something that would go to their general trustworthiness. And could a bar consider that in moral turpitude sort of thing? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's possible, and I'm just not familiar with the rules of all 50 state bars to see how much leeway they would
Mhm.
have.
Gotcha.
I would think they'd be.
Kate,
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead. I was just gonna say Katie Short's my guest. We're talking about the leak of the draft majority opinion by, the U.S. Supreme Court, apparently, that Justice Alito has drafted. The Politico released last night. Uh, so let's move on to the more practical. Assuming that this is the majority position, okay, even though it might be tweaked, might be changed a little bit, assuming that at the end of the term or somewhere between now and the end of the term, that this is handed down and Roe is overturned, what would we be doing differently or should be doing differently if Roe falls? I guess that's the first question. And then I'm going to ask you about the things that are the liberals in Washington are now, getting a head start working on. So how does this change things if Roe falls?
Well, one thing I think last time we spoke about this, Mark, shortly after the argument, and I was predicting that the pro-aborts would not just accept this as the final word from the Supreme Court on
Mhm.
abortion in the Constitution, and that they would bring up other theories and try to find compliant judges who would go ahead. Yeah, I'm gonna, now you've brought this as a brand new argument, and now I'm going to enjoin the law based on this brand new constitutional argument. One thing that this draft opinion does do is it forecloses, for instance, probably the most likely argument is the equal protection argument, that
Right.
somehow abortion is, and so this opinion says nope, that one doesn't work either. And
Yeah,
so
I was as I read the decision late into the night, my eyes were beginning to glaze over. It seems like Justice Alito went out of his way to make clear that that isn't gonna fly.
right,
Equal protection argument for the abortion right in the Constitution is not going to fly with the court, which
right,
I thought was a very smart preemptive strike against those who are probably wanting to prepare a lawsuit like
right.
that.
Right, exactly. So, and I think, even if they could shop around and find some district court judge who would say, well, that was just dicta because that wasn't really, briefed or whatever. I don't think it would survive a trip to a court, the Circuit Court of Appeals. So
Right.
I was very happy to see that, and also kind of repeatedly talking about how it is not in the Constitution. Okay, and the laws that had been against abortion, the fact that abortion was criminalized, you know, in this country had been for a long time, continued to be up till the eve of Roe. So it did seem to be trying to block the exit, so to speak. Um,
So what does this do? If Roe falls, some people are under the impression that abortion is illegal across the country. We all hopefully understand that's not the case.
right.
How does this affect, say, for an example, a heartbeat bill in the state of Ohio that has been held up in the courts because of the Roe versus Wade decision? If Roe falls, what happens to a heartbeat bill generally, or bills like it, or trigger laws that have either going to be put into place or are being are moving through the legislatures now? What typically will happen? Because I think a lot of people think that immediately, like a heartbeat bill is going to go into effect the day after Roe versus Wade
Right.
falls.
No, I
Is that
mean,
right?
you have to have the whoever it is, the attorney general, to go to court and move to lift the injunction and let the law go into effect. And then, as I believe we also discussed before, you have to have prosecutors who are willing to enforce the law, and attorney general or local prosecutors. Which it is unfortunate that at this time, the burden is still on the pro-life movement to get everything lined up, to make this actually happen. You need to have the legislature to pass the laws. You need to have the executive to enforce the laws, and you need to have a state judiciary who is not going to interfere either, because we have seen that over and over again.
So it's unlikely that we're going to see an immediate enforcement of laws that have been either on the books and have been enjoined, or ones that were in force prior to Roe versus Wade being handed down. So I guess it's time for us to start thinking what a post-Roe America is going to look like. I guess I'd like to ask you, where we want to have this balance between the fact that this is not an official position or a decision of the court, but it certainly appears like Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned. Some of us, like myself, I'm thinking, oh, this is certainly something we want to mark and celebrate to a certain degree.
Mhm.
But the time is not yet for that, I assume, right? I mean, we're marking the fact that it was leaked and what that means. But when it is handed down, assuming that it is overturned, how do you why how would you go about marking that and giving people suggestions on to how to treat this decision once it is handed down? Because I think a lot of people want to celebrate prematurely.
Well, I think we do. One of the things that Alito, this draft opinion, says is this far and no further in a couple of respects. One is in terms of abortion itself, like the Constitution is silent, on abortion.
Mhm.
So in terms of, are we on the way to a actual finding or an actual holding that abortion itself is contrary to the Constitution? You certainly don't see that in the draft opinion.
Right.
The second thing is, just as far as Justice Alito also goes out of his way to say, and by the way, we're not touching a lot of our other crazy decisions either, gay marriage and most, all these other decisions that they've come down, which are on equally shaky ground. But he says, no, 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 we're not going there either. We are just undoing this one egregious wrong. So I guess that's where you would have to. I mean, that's what the celebration would be, is that an egregious wrong has finally been righted,
Right.
and with that limitation, we are back to not where we were, but where we are back to a point where we can, at least fight on a level playing field, a somewhat level playing field.
I'm going to ask you to now even more deeply gaze into your crystal ball and go beyond what we know the Biden administration is going to do and the majorities in the House for sure and Senate are going to attempt to do. And there are other things that the federal government can attempt. One is, I think the FDA may even go further with the abortion pill. They've already removed restrictions that limit the abortion pill's use, as far as requiring a in person meeting with the physician, and now you can do it over telemed. Do you see that as a possible move that maybe they would restrict states who are passing legislation right now to restrict the abortion pill? Do you think that the federal government might try to keep states from doing that?
I think that they will certainly be looking for ways to do that. But again, without the backstop of a federal court, the right to abortion. I mean, because for instance, you've had challenges to, I remember a case in Oklahoma, and I'm sure there have been others where states have said, basically all they said was, we're gonna follow the FDA rules, which were actually stricter than what abortion clinics were doing, and a court struck that down as because it was too restrictive on the constitutional right to abortion. But I don't know what sort of hook they would have to be able to say to invalidate state laws that are more restrictive than what the federal government chooses to do. For instance, states are allowed to, if they wanted to ban smoking, below the age of 25, they probably could. So, or buying
Mhm.
cigarettes. So, I don't think that they could do that. They might try to link it to funding, though.
Well, I think it was at least interesting this morning to see the Biden administration's reaction to this. They said that they were going to look to congressional remedies for the abortion issue, and they were. I expected them almost to come out and say we don't recognize the legitimacy of the decision, assuming it is what it is, or saying that this court is rogue. I really was shocked to see that they're basically assuming or going ahead with the notion that this is reality and they're planning for the future on a legislative level, because they have said things about the court in the past on other issues when they don't agree with them and basically ignored them. So I was really surprised to see that they didn't come out really strongly and just say this is illegit. We need to expand the court. Here's a good reason for it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think where they've questioned the legitimacy of a federal court decision is where the federal court decision impinges on some sort of federal government action. Whereas here, this is the court stepping back and saying states are permitted to regulate and restrict abortion, and so
Mhm.
the federal government is not in a position. They could say we don't recognize the legitimacy of this decision, but the states themselves certainly do, and they
Right.
are the ones who would be closing down abortion clinics and finding penalizing abortion providers. But I mean, I agree that they aren't at least pretending that we are going to put, the entire, every branch of the federal, I mean, every branch of the executive branch, every agency onto, look for ways to protect abortion. I agree with you
Which
that
is
that
what they kinda did in the Texas heartbeat case as well. I
right.
mean, they were putting every resource they could to try to turn that one around. Folks, I just wanna exhort you, this is not an official decision of the US Supreme Court, this is only a draft of a majority opinion by one of the justices. We don't wanna celebrate. There'll be a time for that, at least at some level, but this is the time to get serious about our efforts to end abortion altogether and provide the resources to parents who are considering abortion. And some of the things we're looking at doing here is to be able to employ some of our resources in states where we have a really good chance of pushing over the finish line some of these laws that have been on the books but held up, maybe trigger laws, stuff like that. So we're going to be unveiling other actions as things progress over the next months after after this decision is handed down. And as a final note, we have to thank Donald Trump for putting 3 justices on the Supreme Court. The pro-life movement had something to do with that, no question. But who would have thunk Donald Trump, of all people, will be go down in the history books possibly as the man who put the justices on the Supreme Court to reverse the most egregious decision in United States Supreme Court history. So those people who are never Trumpers, if you haven't come on side of the president, former president, this is the time to do it, because this is big news coming out of Washington. Katie, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Bye.
Katie Short, my guest. God bless you, everyone. And if you have further questions, go ahead and fill those out, put those in the comment section, and we will respond to them as we are able. And stay tuned to these platforms for more information regarding this momentous outcome, it looks like, at the U.S. Supreme Court, where it looks like they're going to be overturning Roe versus Wade. We'll see you next time. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, America, to bless God.
You've been listening to Mark Harrington, your radio activist. For more information on how to make a difference for the cause of life, liberty, and justice, go to createdequal.org. To follow Mark, go to markharringtonshow.com. Be sure to tune in next time for your marching orders in the culture war.